Listen, if you still think that prompt engineering is the key to mastering AI, you're already falling behind, my friend. While everyone's obsessing over the perfect prompt, the real pros have already moved on to something that's much more powerful, and that's context engineering. Today, I'm going to show you guys why this shift isn't just a trend, but it's the future of how we work with AI. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why context engineering can cut your AI costs by up to 70%, and that's research backed. It can also improve your response quality dramatically, and why companies are already building entire teams for context engineering. Let's get into it. All right, before we really get into it, let's kind of get on the same level grounding, and let's first make sure we're even clear about what we're talking about. What even is context engineering? So while most people think that an AI interaction looks something like this, you type in a prompt and you get a response, it's not quite that simple. Here's what's actually happening under the hood. Whenever you send a prompt to an AI like Claude or ChatGPT, that prompt is just one small piece of a much larger system. You could think of it like that typical picture where you see the tip of an iceberg. Your prompt is just the tip that you see, but there's this massive foundation and multiple layers underneath that actually determines the quality of the response that you get. Context engineering is the strategic design of this entire foundation, of those layers underneath the tip of that iceberg. It includes things like system instructions that shape the AI's personality and behavior. It includes retrieved information from knowledge bases and documents. Think about RAG. It can also include conversation history and working memory. You can upload files and data sources. You can set environment settings and constraints. And you can even predetermine the formatting and structure of how information is presented back to you. So while prompt engineering is going to focus on crafting that one question or request, context engineering is about architecting the entire environment where that interaction happens. So let's think about it like this. If prompt engineering is asking the right question, then context engineering is asking the right question to the right expert in the right room and with the right resources available. So let's talk about kind of how we got here. How do we get to context engineering? So in the early days of AI, when it was this big boom with ChatGPT, we had really simple command response systems. Like we talked about earlier, you type something and you'd get a response. For example, you might say, translate this to Spanish, and you get a basic translation back. Then came the prompt engineering boom, where people started to discover that longer, more detailed prompts got them better results. And so from that, we started learning about techniques like few-shot prompting, chain of thought reasoning, and role-based prompting. And this was a ton of progress, but it kind of created a new problem. Because of this, prompts started getting longer and longer. I've even seen some prompts that go over 2,000 words, all because people are trying to cram every possible instruction and example into that one initial request. This is inefficient, expensive, and frankly, it's not scalable. It's also not something that you can do systematically. So when you talk about implementing this in a business or in production systems, it becomes unrealistic. So that's when people started to realize that instead of making prompts longer, we need to make context smarter. So instead of cramming everything into one prompt, we engineer the entire system to provide the right context automatically and from the jump. Again, kind of curating that environment. And this is largely why Anthropic, the makers of Claude, came up with the standardized MCP, or Model Context Protocol. It standardized how LLMs can understand context and now not only know what tools to use, but also know when and how to use them. Let me walk you guys through a hypothetical example that's going to illustrate the potential savings and how this can be a game changer for a company's bottom line. So in this scenario, imagine that you're using ChatGPT 4 for customer service. So a traditional approach just using prompt engineering might look something like this. You have a long prompt with examples that can be about 800 tokens. And then you have your custom query, which can be about 100 tokens. And then you have the AI response, which can be about 300 tokens. That's a total token interaction of 1,200 tokens. Now, based on the current GPT-4 estimated pricing, that brings you to about 3.6 cents per interaction. Now, that was the traditional prompt engineering approach. Now let's talk about the context engineering approach, which is the smarter approach. So you're going to set instructions one time. You set these system prompts that aren't repeated with each query, so you don't have to give examples every time. You do it one time, and every prompt after that will live by those standards and by the system examples that you gave. This is going to help you get back relevant examples only, where maybe you get back the best 2 to 3 most relevant examples and not a whole list of 20 examples where most of them aren't even helpful. and you're just wasting tokens. So let's compare it. Looking on the right-hand side, when you look at context engineering, let's say you have that streamlined prompt because you have a system prompt in place. That streamlined prompt is only going to cost you 150 tokens. And then you have the same custom query where you actually ask the questions, and that's going to be 100 tokens. And then the response you get back may only be 250 tokens. So now you're talking about a total of 500 tokens as compared to 1,200 tokens that were used with the prompt engineering example. So we go from a 3.6 cents per interaction with prompt engineering to a 1.5 cent per interaction approach with context engineering. So this almost a 60% savings just based on the number of tokens that you're using because you're using less tokens. It's more efficient. So to try and illustrate the scale of the potential impact, we can imagine a company that spends $5,000 a month on AI tokens. With proper context engineering, they might be able to reduce that to $1,800 while actually getting better results. So that's a hypothetical savings of over $38,000. Of course, the actual results will depend on your specific implementation and use cases, but you get the idea. So I briefly touched on this before, but that's just talking about the cost savings. That's just one part of the story. Context engineering doesn't just make it cheaper, it actually makes it better. It makes your results more effective. Let me show you why. When you rely heavily on prompts, you're forcing the AI to process everything fresh each time. So it's like hiring an expert consultant, but them spending their first hour of every meeting with you re-explaining your entire business to them. It's inefficient and it's going to be error prone. You don't have any efficiency gains there. But with proper context engineering, the AI already will know your brand's voice and the style guidelines and the way you like to speak to your customers, kind of a personality or an identity. It can understand your product specifications. It can understand the different customer segments that you work with and their preferences. It might even have some specific knowledge about the industry that you work in, allowing it to better understand terminology and standards. And it might also have some history of your success stories inside. This is going to lead to responses that are more accurate, more consistent, and more aligned with your specific needs. So of course, again, results are going to vary based on the implementation, but overall, context engineering over prompt engineering is going to give you typically more improvements in several key areas. In most frameworks, you're going to see patterns like fewer factual errors because there's a better source of material. You're going to see better consistency across responses through standardized text. You're going to see improved alignment because of those brand guidelines and that brand voice that you gave it. And you're going to probably see a higher user satisfaction based on those AI responses because they're going to be more contextually appropriate. All right, so by this point, you might be saying, all right, Al, that sounds cool, that sounds fine, but how do we actually go about implementing this? Let me give you a hypothetical roadmap. So first, you would audit your current prompts. Let me give you a practical roadmap. First, you would audit your current prompts by identifying what's being repeated across the interactions. You take those same repeated elements and make them your system instructions and knowledge base. Next, you're going to build your context layers. Let me break down what I mean. You have a system layer, which is going to be your personality, role, and behavioral guidelines for the AI. This is where you can give it your brand's voice and the way you like to interact with your customers. Then you have a knowledge layer, which is going to be domain-specific information and examples, such as industry standards or your specific way of doing business. Then you have a memory layer where conversation history and preferences will be learned. And finally, you have a data layer where you upload documents and provide real-time information. The third step is to design your retrieval systems. So instead of including all possible examples in every prompt, you can create smart systems that pull in only the most relevant context for each specific situation. And finally, you continue to optimize. So this isn't a one-time thing. You can track your token usage, your response quality, and your user satisfaction. And context engineering can be iterative, and you will constantly refine what information is most valuable in different scenarios. Tools like MCP, vector databases, and custom API integration make this much easier than building everything from scratch. The investment and setup will pay for itself very quick through more efficiency and reduced costs. So hopefully by now you all can start to see why context engineering represents a fundamental shift in how we approach AI systems. While others are focused on perfecting individual prompts, the real opportunity is going to come from designing smarter, more efficient AI environments or ecosystems. The potential benefits of lowering costs, higher quality, better consistency, and improved scalability are going to make this approach worth serious consideration for anyone working with AI at scale or trying to implement AI into their business. Which actually brings me to my next point. If you're a small business or anyone who's looking to implement AI and you want to know how you can best do that, you can head over to www.rapidshift.ai and book your free AI audit or your free AI strategy call with myself or someone from my team. And we'll be glad to help you look at your business and see where's the low hanging fruit, where are the initial use cases, or we could simply just educate you more on AI and how it could be relevant to your business. If you found the video helpful, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so I can keep bringing you guys these great AI insights. Until next time, I'm Al Bryant, and I'm out. Peace.